If you go on a walk, you're probably going to have a podcast or an audiobook on. When you're lying in bed, you're either scrolling or listening to an audiobook. Like, we've kind of lost the meaning of life and human connection. I'm quite against completion rates in e-learning training because I just don't believe in e-learning training. If an e-learning training could change a behaviour, the world would be a different place. But I think that you and I know at our age that by doing an e-learning, our behaviour is not going to change. I think technology is brilliant, and I think that we just need to give people the guidelines on how to use it correctly. And I think, like, if an employee clicks something and it can shut a whole company down, I don't think that's the employee's fault.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the GCS Leaders Series podcast. We have Louise O'Hagan today. She's a consultant and works for the Dublin chapter and other organisations. The focus of today's conversation is very much around cyber psychology and the human element of cybersecurity. Obviously, within the podcast, we talk a lot about cybersecurity and leaders within that. But what I really like about this one is that Louise takes a very different point of view. The key thing about this is that humans are not the weakest link. And funny enough, on a lot of our podcasts, we've always talked about humans and users being the weakest link. I think the way I, following on from this conversation, think about it is that technology is not made for humans all the time, and that technology should be made for humans, and human behavior should be first and foremost in its mind. So it's been a learning process for me as well, and how that means for society and how we deal with the difficulties of new technology and how cyber can help us and not hinder us. So it's a very interesting conversation, I think, for everyone with kids, with older parents who work in organizations and who are trying to get through this world without getting hacked or getting defrauded online. So without further ado, here's Louise. Louise, hello, how are you?
Great, thank you.
Fantastic, good stuff. So it's great to be here. You've decided to hide yourself up in the attic, I think you said.
Yeah, hiding from a 2-year-old. Yeah.
Fantastic, good stuff. And you've just told me that you've already cooked a roast today, so I'm very jealous, and an apple strudel. So it sounds like you've had a very productive day. So congratulations. I jokingly said I wish I'd have done this live, so we could have this conversation over a roast dinner, which would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure would.
Fantastic. So it's great to have you here, Louise. As I've said, Louise is a specialist and a spokesperson, advocate for the humanity, I think, in cyber science, cybersecurity, and coming at it from a psychology background. And someone we obviously do a lot of work in Ireland. You're based in Dublin, work for a number of organizations as well as consulting for yourself. And one of our sales managers, Andrew Baxter, said that this would be a great person to speak to. So we've turned this around very quickly, and it's great to have you on board. But I think for me, doing these podcasts, we do a lot of these podcasts with regards to cybersecurity, and we talk to CISOs, and we talk about the technology side of it. But I'm really interested to speak to yourself, Louise, about I think it's the more human element of cyber, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm fully based on the human side, and I self-admit I am not a techie person at all.
Fantastic. Well, that's good for me because neither am I. And sometimes these conversations go a little bit. I'm always trying to keep it in a kind of a leader's basis or a human basis myself, right? But sometimes it's quite hard because people rightly are really talking about things they're passionate about, so kind of quantum or something to do with Azure or something like that, and it kind of we lose it. So hopefully we can keep it completely on humanity today. But I think that your background and what you're doing kind of comes quite a lot from your own background in terms of how you got into being in this area. And although like job titles like kind of cybersecurity governance program manager, I think from your background that's not exactly where you started, right, Louise? So it's good for us or for people to understand how you come to be in this really, really important and really kind of fast-paced sort of environment, that the cutting edge of technology. I can't, not taking the wrong way, that's not exactly where you started, right?
Yeah, I had a very weird way of getting into this. So I worked as a legal secretary, so I did a lot of work with criminals, which involved prison visits, court visits. And that kind of got me interested in psychology. And I started didn't go to college till I was 28. So I started doing a degree in college when I was 28 in psychology. And as part of that, I did work experience with special needs adults and then ended up working with them. And one of the girls that I was a key worker for ended up getting socially engineered. At the time, it was Facebook. So this was like 15 years ago. And I just kind of got obsessed then with the security of people online, what was going on. And that led me then to do a master's in cybersecurity. So that was 2013 when no one really knew what it was. And I still think a lot of people don't really know what it is. And out of that, kind of continued then on with education and did a PhD, which is an interdisciplinary PhD. So I was based in the law school, which kind of ticked the box for the crime element. I was based in the cybersecurity school, which was obviously the cybersecurity, and then the psychology, which was really the human element. And it was a nice way of bringing everything I'm interested in together, and kind of going ahead and doing an interdisciplinary PhD, which was great, very interesting.
And do you feel, because, psychology is obviously not new, Sigmund Freud and all that, but, cybersecurity is quite new. The intersection of this, is the kind of the undiscovered element of all this the thing that really drew you to it?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, definitely. And I think also we can learn a lot from like past psychology theories and like apply them to what's happening now. And then also there's such a need for new theories. Like if we think about how people act so differently online than they would in real life, like there's so much psychology needs to be explored. And I think also the fact that everything we do is now online. We don't really live in the real world anymore. We book our holidays, we book our food, we do our banking, we do our food shopping. Like everything has some sort of online element. So we really need to use psychology to explore this, to see what's going on. And I think like even with kids today, like I have a 2-year-old and I'm like, what is the world going to be like for him? Like I'm lucky. I grew up in a world where I made it to 15 without any kind of digital influence on my life. So I got to play in a field, drink in a field, whatever else it was I did in real life. And I think that's a big problem with today. Everything is online and parents are trying to kick their kids out the door to play in fresh air. And it's sad, but it's the reality is. And that's why we need people with psychology disciplines to kind of explore this, research this, and figure out how we're going to get through this.
And I was telling you, I'm quite interesting for me. This is particularly personally interesting because, as I said, my daughter has just finished a psychology degree, and her dissertation was about doom scrolling, basically. Ella, and she got a really good mark. She got a first class mark for her dissertation, which is basically, I think the conclusion was it's really, really bad for everyone.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But also the linking into something like drugs or addiction or something like that, like it starts off good and then gets bad, isn't it? That's the thing that I mean, we all see it, right? You can, it's possible to look through Instagram reels and whatever forever. It will never stop.
I know. I feel like we're never getting a break. Like we're never having that downtime. Even if you go on a walk, you're probably going to have a podcast or an audiobook on. When you're lying in bed, you're either scrolling or listening to an audiobook. Like we've kind of lost the run of the meaning of life and human connection. Like how many people, like today, I made a roast for my family, which I try and do once a week because I'm like, we need this normality and I want to bring my children up to have this normality of what I had. And like, it's so hard to have like no screen dinners and all that, like, but you have to role model as well as a parent, I think.
I think it's important to say that we are not recording this on a Sunday either, are we, Louise? This is a Friday roast dinner, which I fully respect. This is a great institution, which I may need to speak to my own wife about to say I only get mine on Sundays. But we don't generally do recordings of the podcast on Sundays, Louise. So this is a Friday roast. Is this a normal thing in your house?
No. So I've just started maternity leave for my second child and I'm taking full advantage of being able to bake and cook and all the things that I can't do when I'm working full time. So
fantastic. So you're in some ways, when we talk about this thing, it's like living in the real world. You're trying to be trying to show like your family, as it were, this is how it should be. I could order like Deliveroo or Just Eat or whatever, and it's probably very hard to do a roast when you're 3 weeks away from giving birth, right? But but do you think it's important to show? I mean, this is part of psychology, right? It's important to show that you should do these things. You should be active.
100%, yeah. And that's the only way I think the kids are going to learn as well, is by us role modeling some sort of normality. Because like, I think it's sad when you look at a family in a restaurant and everyone's on a screen. We were in Spain this summer and there was kids at the pool on screens, screaming for screens. And I was like going to my partner, this is so sad. I really hope that we don't end up like that. And like, we could do. There's nothing, it just happens. But it's like you're in like 30-degree heat with a swimming pool and a kids club and you want to watch a screen at the pool.
And it is, and it's easy as well. We've both got children. It's easy to give a child a screen because it's very, very tough, isn't it, to look after children? It's very tough to do your work, right? If you kind of work from home, you're hybrid, what's the best way to make your child quiet? I was going to say shut up, but that sounds a little bit brutal. But it's to give them a screen, right? that is the best way. And also we live in a kind of a world where, I think we're all a little bit scared of the outside world for our children. Like you said, we used to go and play in fields. We used to go and drink in fields. We used to go and dance in fields, depending on what generation you're from, right? But we would be very scared for our own children to do that, wouldn't we? I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear mongering around, being outside, I think. And lots to do with like, I don't know, I think fear mongering around risks of this and risks of that. And I mean, let your kids play in mud and get dirty. It's not going to kill them.
Exactly. And there are many things online, as you know, is kind of bringing you into your subjects, that is much more dangerous, as it were, for children when they're looking at TikTok or Instagram or even Roblox or Minecraft, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think that the online world is much more dangerous than the outside.
Yeah. So how do you bring this into the real world in terms of work, in terms of how you engage with organizations and your actual kind of role? Then what would you do when you go and speak to leaders or other businesses about this particular problem?
I think that like research is always my first point of call for anything. I think like when you go into an organization, if you're working with them, you need to talk to your people, research your people. I think most organizations throw technology at everything, and like there's a new shiny new tool, and we've talked 10 minutes without mentioning AI, so here I go. And now it's all about AI is going to fix this, AI is going to ruin this, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like no one's talking to the people or asking them how they feel. So I think research should be at the core of everything. You can't really create meaningful change or influence behavior without first understanding the people that you're actually trying to reach in an organization, whether it's employees, customers, leaders. You really need to know their motivations, their challenges. So I'd always start with research, focus groups, surveys, interviews, conducting desktop research, like when working with external audiences, is really important. Know your audience. It makes you have like the evidence and not just work off assumptions. We're all biased. We all have assumptions. And it's not a good way to approach something, So I think that's really important. Meeting people where they are.
And from your side, does that mean that when companies are working together that, technologists, leaders should consult with psychologists, both for internal within their own workers, or for like if they're developing, products for customers, to kind of understand that human element? I guess what you think is what I think is that people don't do that enough. They don't consider the human element enough.
No, because it's not really valued. So it's very hard to put a value on it. Or if you're selling a tool, you can get budget for it, you can get this. But when you're talking about human things, a lot of it is like abstract information or information, and it's to do with kind of change management programs or working things out like that. And it's just not valued as much. Whereas like everything would run a lot smoother if everything was understood from the start of how we're going to do this, why we're going to do this, what people's motivations are. It would make projects run a lot smoother.
Yeah, and I guess, there's a wide range of people, and maybe like in this global world, lots and lots of different, areas and considerations need to be taken into place. And I do sometimes think that, maybe the profit margins or the kind of speed of delivery, if you know what I mean, is what's there the first. And then when it comes to cyber, it's more about, I think, attacks or getting hacked or whatever, and not so much about, I guess what you're saying is that the kind of the elements of how humans come into this. And I think it's true, and you'll probably be able to give me more information, is generally like hacks are based on human error, aren't they? As opposed to, a very, very clever hacker. It's generally down to someone making a mistake, right?
Yeah, and we're in this place now where we're 25 years on from when that guy Bruce, someone in 2000, said that humans were the weak link. It was information security, it was called back then. It wasn't cybersecurity just yet. And we look at newspaper articles, blogs, humans are a weak link. Humans are insider risks. Humans make errors. Humans make mistakes. So it's all this blame on humans. But like, it's actually the fact that we didn't teach them how to use the technology. It's not that they're like these like stupid people. It's that they weren't taught how to use it, or the organizations they're in aren't set up for them to work properly, because most people go to work to do their job, not to do cybersecurity. So I think we're in this weird place where, like, I'm going to call it the techie people are like, oh, humans are doing all this. It's all the humans' fault, blah, 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 blah. But like, then the companies also didn't have proper behavior change, culture transformation, digital transformation programs to teach people how to use the technology safely. And I think that's really important. And I've noticed, like, I only put a blog up the other day called Oops, We Did It Again. Like, we told everyone to use technology and the internet and didn't teach them how to do it. Then we called people stupid for 25 years. Now we have told everyone if they don't use AI, they're going to lose their jobs. But yet again, we have no AI digital literacy. I have never seen any like public campaign teaching people how to use AI safely or internal in organizations. And I was actually at a cybersecurity event yesterday, and half the presentation was about AI awareness training. And I'm like, but who's actually doing this? Because I don't know anyone that's doing it.
Yeah, and we're still working out the ethics of AI, aren't we? Don't even know what's good or bad or what we're doing. So AI awareness, yes, we're all aware it's happening, but we don't necessarily know what it really means or where it's going, or what it means for us or what we think about it, I guess. So my question for you is, when you go into an organization or when you're working on one of your programs, what are wins for you? If we go in bearing in mind that probably most companies or organizations are not considering the human element in their systems, let alone cyber psychology, what would you see after a 6-month period as being, I've achieved some stuff there, I've made some good things happen?
First of all, cybersecurity being seen as an enabler, not like, I think the guy from SANS says, that the Department of No. I think it's really important for the workforce to know, the employees to know who the cybersecurity people are, to feel safe to go to them. Psychological safety is so important. If you're in an organization where someone is scared to speak up, well, then your cybersecurity is going to fail at some point. And then, like I said, the research, the talking to your people, like you want to have a benchmark of your baseline, and then you want to do whatever it is the program you're running is, let's just say for the sake of things we just talked about, an AI awareness program. So you've asked people at the start, and then you're asking them again in 6 months, and you're hoping that you've seen some shifts in mindsets, shifts in beliefs, and then shifts in behaviors. Behaviors are very hard to measure. We have to use a lot of different tools and a lot of different ways to do it. But, there's easy ones like how many people are using the password manager. Did we see an increase in that? The classic, the phishing simulation. I'm quite against completion rates in e-learning training, because I just don't believe in e-learning training. Like if an e-learning training could change a behavior, like the world would be a different place. But I think that you and I know at our age that by doing an e-learning, our behavior is not going to change.
No, I think we've already talked about e-learning training. And I've said I'm the sort of person that does it, but I'm anal about it. I will do it, click, 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 and then I always know the answers, so I'm through it. And I only do it so that I can bug everyone else, say, well, I've done it, you need to do it. But I don't know, I mean, I'm generally quite good at the technology side of things, but that's not the way you learn, is it? You learn from collaboration,
Yeah.
you learn from being human. I mean, I guess someone would listen to this and think that you maybe feel that this whole thing isn't a good thing. Technology is not a good thing, and that we shouldn't be doing it. Is that how you judge it, or do you feel that it is a good thing, but we just need to do it right?
Yeah, I think technology is brilliant, and I think that we just need to give people the guidelines on how to use it correctly. And I think that companies should give their employees the chance of that. Companies should have enough tooling in place that like if an employee clicks something and it can shut a whole company down, I don't think that's the employee's fault.
Yeah, exactly. Because the system shouldn't have been put in that way to allow that to happen, if you know what I mean. I always think about that. Sorry, Karen.
I was just going to say, I think like everything we're saying here is like, there's a problem that we're all working in silos and there's no collaboration between everyone. And if there's collaboration between everyone working together, it would make all of this a lot easier.
And do you think that, because obviously it's the Leaders series, do you think that's what leaders should do? Leaders should lead in terms of, helping and empowering people to have that trust in them. If they see that their leaders have that trust, then everything will flow from there.
Yes, I think that would definitely make it easier. And then leaders working with other leaders as well, I think is critical. Often in massive companies, everyone works in silos. You don't even know what tools people are using in different departments. And then there's programs going on that you don't know about. And if everyone works together in a collaborative manner, it'll make everything a lot easier and flow a lot easier.
Yes, because I know, like in my own organization, and you've worked in so much larger organizations than mine that are bigger, like engaged, the 1,500 people, GCS is one part of it. It's an example that we're doing automation at the moment. We're all trying to work out how to build agents in Copilots, etc. They've kind of given us a remit to go and break things. I can't actually break anything because I can't make it work right for me anyway, but to secure our systems, which is, I guess, is a good thing. But yes, all sorts of silos. But we, as leaders, different CEOs in the business, are actually now coming together in groups and saying, well, how did you do this? And like humans do, right? That collaboration element is so important. And I guess if people collaborate, like you're saying, if people collaborate, that's one of the ways, because working as a team, humans are stronger. That's one of the ways to stop humans being the weakest link, right? Which I guess if I take one thing from the start of this conversation, Louise, is that's the wrong thing to say. In your opinion, saying humans are the weakest link in systems is bad.
Yeah, that's like saying someone is really bad at driving that never did a driving lesson.
Yeah.
You have to be taught how to do something to be able to do it.
If they're still really bad at driving after they've had all the driving lessons, then you'll accept that they probably are the weakest link, right?
Yeah. And I think like people start like roles in organizations and it's now presumed that like on day one when you start, you know how to work whatever the system is, whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever. It's just presumed you know how to work all of this stuff, which I think is random. Like if you think about all the systems that you use in your day-to-day, which is probably quite a lot, we're never taught how to use any of them. Like there was never like, it was just like, especially say, for example, with COVID, everyone just had to suddenly use Zoom. And I was like, okay, no, I obviously people can learn things by themselves, but there's certain people that maybe can't or that can't do it safely. So that's, I think, another aspect as well.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? You kind of, all of these systems generally are built to be quite easy to use. We're using a system called Riverside. I mean, it's a very clever system, but it's basically an online system which records videos, right? And if I'd been trying to do this 10 years ago, I'd have to probably get 4 or 5 people in and set up a camera and do this. And I've just bought like my Yeti mic and my Logi camera and all that sort of stuff, and now I'm making my own podcast. But it's easy to use, but I guess it's not easy. It's not easy to kind of work out what the mistakes are that you can make in terms of cybersecurity, right? So
Yeah.
I haven't got a clue whether someone could bust into Riverside or take all your, you know, your great stuff and use it for themselves or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like it's easy to use, but not easy to mess up.
Yeah. I think, and I think to your point, like security is just an afterthought of everything, because it doesn't make money.
Yeah. The only
It
thing,
costs a lot of money.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I guess and do you feel like, you say what you're doing, as you're going along, like I feel like you're working at the cutting edge of technology, but as cyber and as hacking and as these businesses are more and more, like you say, it doesn't make money, but it certainly saves money. And you see that in the UK from things like Curb, M&S, Jaguar. I'm sure there's examples in Ireland. I don't know, but I bet there are examples of Ireland. Do you see now more people coming to you and saying, which is obviously good for yourself, that I really, really need some help with this?
Cyber psychology is still not fully recognized or valued as a critical discipline at all. Like the insights into human behavior, motivation, and cognitive bias are fundamental to understanding how and why people interact with technology. But because it's non-technical, because it's not a tool, and because it's like soft skills, it just doesn't receive the same investment and attention as technical does. And as we've discussed, the majority of cyber incidents do involve some form of human element. So, yeah.
So how do you see that progressing? I mean, how do you see that relationship between technology design and human psychology evolving? Or how should it evolve?
Um, like we already talked about, collaboration, I think it'll be important. And I think maybe, as we know, the EU is heavily regulating at the moment, with a lot of the regulations are including even things like, for example, tabletop exercises, more awareness training. And I think that, there's more pressure going to be put on C-suite and the board and stuff. I think that's where people will realize they need people to come into the companies and help with that, because they're probably not going to be able to do it themselves. So probably that. So hopefully it'll go from being kind of a niche, nice to have, as part of, and become like part of the core cybersecurity strategy. Because as we've said, like technology is embedded into every part of our life now. So
It needs to happen.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess when you're thinking about this, I mean, a lot of it comes down to a culture in an organization. You talked about trust, you
Yes.
talked about empowerment, you talked about people collaborating together, and that's all culture, right? And so when I listen to
Yeah.
this, is it right or wrong? I mean, the people that change culture would usually be your HR team, right? That's who thinks about these types of things. We obviously in recruitment, we think a lot about HR. We deal with HR a lot. And when you want to try and change your culture, it's HR that work on who you're going to recruit, what types of people, what types of interviews. But from what you're saying, this culture element pretty much comes down from the technology people, right? Who are the last people that you would probably invest in changing your culture. So do you think that this is a more of an HR thing? I don't know if you have many conversations with HR when you go in there. You're speaking to the CISO, but maybe you might think, well, shouldn't I be speaking to the HR director here?
Yeah, I suppose definitely good to include them in the conversation. But I think it needs to be a conversation between all three, someone with, cyber psychology background, a technologist, and the HR, because company culture plays a huge role in shaping secure behaviors, and all three parties in that are needed to help shape secure behaviors. Like you can have all the tools and policies in the world, but if people don't feel like psychologically safe to speak up, report mistakes, ask questions, then security can't happen. And culture really sets the tone for all of that. It tells people if security is genuinely valued or it's just something written in a policy. And like when leaders do take security seriously, when it's talked about openly, people are recognized. I'm all for reward and recognition of doing the right thing. That's when secure behavior really becomes part of how the organization can operate. So I suppose the culture is either going to like support or undermine every security like effort. It's like kind of an invisible force that kind of determines whether people feel security is not part of their role, but like they're involved in the security loop, let we say, or it's just someone else's role. Oh, it's just those people's role. And that's not really what you want. You want everyone thinking they've a part to play.
So I guess it comes back again to that collaboration element. You need the different people talking together to build that culture, both the people that can change it from the people element and the people that can change it from the technology side and the people that are aware of the risks. So I mean, for our listeners now, just so they're now understanding kind of what it is you do within your organizations and the people that you consult with. How do you describe your approach then? So when you go into an organization, you know, how do you manage to change the culture, get more collaboration, you know, build some trust in the importance of psychology, and the human not being the weakest link?
Yeah, and I think trust is the exact word that's needed there. So trust is so important. And people change their like behavior when security is relevant, easy, and supported, and they feel like they're in a trusted environment. It's also really important for people to understand the why, and that it's a kind of a collective benefit. Another thing is when you're kind of running all these different types of programs as well, is people much prefer when you're talking about their personal data, or if you run within a massive organization a webinar on like kids' devices, you're going to have triple the amount of people turn up. So you have to be like very tactical in what you're delivering as well, not make it all about work. Like people probably don't really, dare I say, care that much about the data that their company have. But if you're talking about their personal data, their family data, or teaching them how to make something in their house safer, or something as part of their family safer, they're going to turn up much better, or much more likely to turn up. So it's important to kind of consider their personal lives as well. I think that's really important.
And do you find that people who generally care about it in their personal lives care more about it in their work lives? That when you meet someone, you're like, oh, so have you got a password manager? And they're like, no, I just always use the same password one for everything. And well, you're definitely going to be the weakest link.
Yeah, definitely. Like people that have an interest in it, or a lot of people that something have happened to them. Like storytelling is a massive part of this. If you do an in-person training or like an in-person event in your office, and storytelling is part of it, or it's part of a lunch and learn, people are like genuinely interested. Like I was at a cybersecurity lunch yesterday and a girl was telling me how she got scammed on Vinted or something. I think it was Vinted or Depop, and like fascinating story. And like that's stuck in my head. I'm like, wow, when I came home, tell my partner, I was like, oh my God, this happened to this girl, you know? So I think storytelling is also a really important part of this as well. And like we've seen with all the recent massive public hacks, I'm not going to start naming names, but like some of them were really good at opening up what happened and communicating with the public, and then others were pretending stuff wasn't happening, which just kind of makes it shady.
Yeah, because the people don't really buy into this whole thing, or don't really understand, or they feel that you haven't got a handle on it. You know, I like what you say there about storytelling, because I think that that's what people understand, isn't it? I mean, everyone's got their own stories, haven't they, of this type of thing? They're generally not good stories. I mean, my worst story is we hired a person who basically had a text from me on WhatsApp, says looks like it's from me, saying, hi, could you buy me some iTunes vouchers? Right? Random request, because I'm going to give out some prizes. Now, I do a lot of prizes in the organization, right? And he was working the same office as me. And then I don't really know how and why he did it, but then he went to go and buy the iTunes vouchers. I said, I haven't got time. He was quite new. I haven't got time to buy the iTunes vouchers. The fake me, and so he went to buy some iTunes vouchers, and then And then he saw me on the phone, like across the way, so thought he was speaking. And I fake me called him and said, "Oh, can you send me the iTunes vouchers now? Because I can't use them. So you have to send like me the codes." And then basically they scammed him for like about £300 worth of iTunes vouchers. And I felt really bad about it. And it was kind of, like sort of talk about like collaboration and leaders, like empathy. I was like, I didn't do this at all, but I kind of, I helped him out a little bit, but you can't, this is where I guess, like you said, people need to learn, don't they? I've given you this amazing technology, but I haven't really told you how to drive it, right?
Yeah. And I think when something like that happened in an organization I worked in, and the next day we had posters up, your CEO isn't texting you, block him. But like, it was like joke kind of poster, but like just an infographic of like, your CEO isn't texting you, block him. So I think when something like that happens, it's also good to bring awareness to everyone else, and where you can bring humor into it, or make kind of, I know it's not funny, but just something like if someone sees an infographic saying block your CEO or something, it's kind of like, it's a bit of a laugh,
Yeah, exactly. I've got a special word that I use in the organization, which I can't tell anyone, but it's like a kind of a word that I use that no one else knows, and I can't say on this podcast because I don't know people who use it, but that's why I always put it on the end.
Scammers all know.
I always put this weird word at the end that there's no way anyone would ever know that it's me, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, the safe word. Yeah,
the safe word, my own personal safe word. That's right.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to these organizations, again, when you're talking to these, how do you kind of balance that interest in human behavior and within cybersecurity versus the kind of the short-term goals that the organizations also have in terms of, like you said, like making money, getting a release out as quickly as possible, beating the competition, progressing technology forward. How do you balance that out?
I suppose everything kind of needs to be dynamic, relevant, and continuous. Like, I think it's also important to realize that your audiences are also going to be totally different. You're going to have people that are very data driven, so you're going to need to give them the stats and what's happening, and then you're going to have the other people that need the storytelling. So it's also delivering in lots of different methods, which I think is really important.
And I guess that's where, from your side, like having teams like this embedded and collaborating all the time means you're not doing it in terms of a problem that's happened and you're trying to fix it. I guess you would be more about prevention than cure, right?
Yeah, I don't think reactive security is the best way to approach security. And it normally ends up pissing a lot of people off. If an organization has an incident or a breach and then suddenly they just add on loads of all these tools and everything, and it prevents people from being able to do their work. So you're pissing people off, basically. I think that's not a good way to do it. And I think this is also why it's so important to have that feedback loop with your employees, whether it's annual focus groups, whatever way your company does it. Some companies use like anonymous tools. But I do think it's important to always include your employees in the mix, because security in general annoys people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nearly as much as online training, I think, Louise. That's probably...
Yeah.
But I guess it annoys people until they realize how important it is. Another question I talked about, talked about building the culture, et cetera, and obviously you're working with the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, ENISA.
Yeah.
And the European Union is known for quite a lot of, rules and, governance that it puts in. Obviously, I'm in the UK, so we don't have any of this anymore, but we have our own rules, not quite as good as the EU's. But do you think that governments are important when it comes to this type of thing? Because I guess there's lots of people that would say that this is entrepreneurialism and technologies move things forward. They don't need governance. But do you feel that this is really, really important, that we need governance of this?
Yes, this is a societal problem. This is not a personal problem, a company problem, an employee problem. I think like people that are working organizations are at a slight benefit because they're getting some sort of training. Whereas what about the workforce the people, that are unemployed people? They're getting no training. So one, we're relying on private companies to train society. This is like a societal problem. We've seen from all the wider hacks that have happened recently. We had the HSC, our health system, whole thing shut down in Ireland. So that's a societal problem. It's not just I work for a private organization, so I'm going to be affected by this. It's everyone's problem. And I do think the government should be putting money into it. I think there should be public campaigns. I think they should be funding our national cybersecurity centres. I think the training should be starting from a young age. We know the kids are on screens. We know how dangerous screens are. Why is there no training around this for anyone? In Ireland at the moment, 2 of our banks, Bank of Ireland, have a massive campaign on social media scams, public campaign, brilliant. AIB, our other bank, have now started doing nudges and notifications on your phone. Is your software up to date? Then when you go into the app, there's another reminder, and then you can go on to they have a website link that you can go on to, and like that's amazing. But it shouldn't be up to the banks to train society. Like, you know, we have our road safety campaigns. We have all those type of campaigns of how to keep people safe. And I think often cyber is seen as an abstract kind of risk, abstract damage, but it's not. If you look at kind of reports from the internet, there's people that do a report on victims, and the psychological damage, it's not even about the money. Like, you know what I mean? So this is damaging people. And then I think a thing that we also forget about is romance scams. I think they've gone up. Lloyd's have a report out recently. They've gone up 75%. So I don't think any of our organizations teach about romance scams. There is so many people getting scammed out of so much of their money, and there's nothing being done about it publicly. And I do think the government should be doing something about it, even if it's just funding our national cybersecurity centres to have public campaigns.
Yes, exactly. Because I mean, look, what I think about is you just talked there about young people. Like I read about how now AI can kind of fake voices, so it affects like old people as well, doesn't it? Really, you read these terrible stories about people getting conned out of their life savings because they thought that they were having a call from their son and daughter who was having a terrible time in a hospital, and I need you to send my money over. So everyone uses this technology, and you know, criminals don't have any effect. And the other thing I was thinking there was, obviously, if a large company loses £100 million and it's a multi-billion turnover organization, that's bad, right? But if an old lady in Cork loses all of her life savings, that in essence is much worse, I think.
Way worse. Yeah, exactly. Way, way worse. And there's most people can't get the money back. Like, you're not getting that money back.
No,
so
or
it's
not
just
all
gone.
of it. Yeah. No, it could be. I guess you could argue that if it was done on some sort of social media, they could be responsible for it. But I'm sure they would fight against that.
Good luck to someone trying to prove that. Actually, the girl I was talking to about yesterday, I think it was Depop, she had sent the money on Revolut, and apparently she was quick enough to tell Revolut and actually did get her money back. So there you go.
Well, here you go, Revolut. I'm also a Revolut customer, so a shout out to them. I've been very impressed by them recently. So yeah.
I actually I did an interview with a barrister once around cybercrime, and he'd been scammed on his card and he'd gotten the money back and he hadn't reported it. And I was like, okay, but you're like, that's, misinterpreted then reporting statistics because you let a cybercrime happen. And he's like, yeah, but I got my money back. And I was going, yeah, but the bank had to give you the money back. Like, the money doesn't grow for free. So it's funny to think about different people's mindsets around it. So if you report something on your credit card that's gone and your credit card company get the money back, then you don't report it to the police because you got your money back.
Yeah.
So like there's this whole ecosystem that's just all wrong.
It's right. And it's not treated in the same way as a physical crime. They treat physical crime in the right way. But I think that, the thing I take from this, that is, as you say, it's a societal problem, right? Mm-hmm. It isn't just on the cybersecurity managers. It isn't just on, the leaders of a business. This is on, governments, people, communities, society itself to to fix this problem, because it's so new and so fast moving. And like you said, like AI is coming along now. We haven't even solved the social media problems or the internet problems or the telecoms problems. And now we've got a whole new problem, which, you know, none of us really understand what it's going to mean. Which I guess
we've
for
no
you,
idea.
well, I guess for you is, you know, I know you've got a big thing coming up quite soon, haven't you? So I always ask what's next for you, but I think in 3 weeks' time you're about to have another child, aren't you? So
Yeah. Well, I stopped writing for 2 years after submitting my PhD, and I started writing again. So I'm getting very much into writing again. So I'll see where
fantastic,
that takes me.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And I
think
think one
telling some
important
of these
thing,
stories would be quite a good story, Louise. Like to stories you've heard about really, really bad hacks. I would read that.
yeah.
You know,
I think one thing that we didn't touch on as well is, although I'm against calling people weakest links and threats and stuff, I do think we also all have a personal responsibility that we are using tools, and we should also investigate to some extent of what we're using.
yeah,
Fair enough. Like, you know, my 8-year-old niece just goes on TikTok and does whatever. She's not going to have personal responsibility, but we're adults. We
yeah, we
do.
need, yeah,
Like,
totally.
we have to take some responsibility. Like, you know, so as much as like it's great to say there should be public campaigns and stuff, we also should have personal responsibility in relation to this as
Yeah.
well.
And I guess that links into, like you used that analogy of driving, right? You know, we pass our tests, we learn how to
Yeah.
drive, but then we also shouldn't drink drive, and we shouldn't drive above the speed limit, right? Those are
Yeah.
things that we know are bad things to do. And generally
Yeah.
within society, I think British and Irish society, we feel that that's the wrong thing to do, right? And that's kind of a societal change that has happened over a period of years. You know, probably 30 years ago, people didn't care quite so much about drink driving. But I think that's an important way of looking at it. But yeah, I guess, you know, post that or around that, it's strange to say, but to be a cyber psychologist now, I guess it's scary. It always is with cyber, but it must be incredibly interesting. You know, the conversations you're having, the things you're learning, and the conversations you're leading, right? So it must be exciting for you.
Yeah, it's great. It's like never boring. There's always new fascinating research. There's so many amazing other cyber psychologists to follow and keep up with, and it's great. A lot of networking is really important in this field as well. And it's just really good. Like you said, with the ENISA group, like I get to work with people from all over Europe that all have different stories, different opinions, different way of looking at things, and it's amazing. It's a very I don't know, nice community of people. That's I would say. So anyone interested in getting into it should.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, I'm sure
The
that
jobs that might not be there yet, but they will. They'll come.
I'm sure. Well, I'll be on my daughter to say, like, follow on from your dissertation, and if she wants to do clinical psychology, I'm going to say to her cyber psychology. That's the way forward.
Well,
I say.
a lot of people that I did my undergraduate degree with went on to be counselors and psychotherapists, and they tell me that every single person that comes into them, there's an element of cyber within what they're talking in the room with them. Like, so yeah,
That's
it's just
right.
it's integrated in everything, as we
Exactly.
discussed at the start of this. Yeah.
And we as a society need to be kind of working together to fix it and make it better. Are you positive? Are you positive that we will make it better?
Yes, by the time my children are old enough to have devices, it will be safe. Yes.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Well, we'll leave it on that happy note. And Louise, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Good luck with your growing family. And I'm very
Thank you.
jealous of your roast dinner. Keep making those Friday roast dinners. I think this is the best
Yeah.
the best thing that we've got out of this conversation for sure. But thank you very much, Louise, and have a great day.
Thanks for having me.